Welcome to the unit circle. So the unit circle is a circle that has a radius of 1, and we draw a triangle or pick a point x, y, so x across, y up, and form a triangle with an angle theta in it. So it's x units across, y units up to get to the point x, y. And then if we use our SOHCAHTOA, so our ratios for our trigs, sine theta is opposite over hypotenuse, which is y over 1, or just y. Cos theta is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse, which is x over 1, or just x. And tan theta is opposite over adjacent, or y over x, which just so happens to also be sine over cos. We'll worry about that later, but just perhaps keep that in mind, that tan theta is also sine over cos. But the main part for this is that in quadrant 1, all the trig ratios are positive. So now for quadrant 2. So quadrant 2, once again, we draw our triangle in the quadrant. We use the x-axis as our base, so we've got a negative x value this time. Still a positive y because we go up, so it's negative x across, y up to the point xy. The radius is still 1. The angle that gets created from the positive x-axis is 180 minus theta to get around to where that green section is. That's 180 minus the theta, or the angle inside. So let's look. Sine, again, opposite over our hypotenuse, gets us y. Cos theta gets us negative x over 1, which is negative x. Tan theta is equal to opposite over adjacent, which is y over negative x, or negative y over x. So you'll notice that cos and tan are negative in this quadrant, whereas in sine is positive. So we stick with and we look at that sine ratio is the only positive in the second quadrant. So when we move to the third quadrant, the angle theta, it's now created from the positive x is 180 plus the theta. Note now we have a negative x value and a negative y value. So it's negative x, so we're going across the negative x-axis, and we're going down, which is down the negative, or along the negative y-axis. So the sine theta is the negative y, cos theta is negative x, and tan theta is negative y over negative x, or positive y over x. So note here that sine and cos are negative in this quadrant, whereas in tan is positive. So we focus on the positive to give us our little hint in this quadrant. Tan ratio is the only positive in this third quadrant. And finally, the fourth quadrant, the angle theta again, from the positive x-axis, it's 360 minus theta. Y is negative, whereas in x is positive. So you've got sine theta is negative y, cos theta is x, and tan theta is negative y over x. So sine and tan in this quadrant are negative, cos is positive in this quadrant. So this is how we try to remember it. All stations to Crookwell, ASTC, all stations to Crookwell. A, meaning that all trig ratios are positive. S, meaning sine is positive in that quadrant. T, meaning tan is positive in that quadrant. C, meaning cos is positive in that quadrant. So we're just going to have a look at an activity, not an example, just an activity. Just want you to make sure your calculator's in degrees, and you're going to enter each of these in your calculator and just get an answer. So pause the video, just enter them, write down what answer you get for each one, and then we're just going to confirm what we learn about the all stations to Crookwell. So the first ones, so for sine 30, sine 150, 210 and 330, you should have got a half, minus a half and minus a half. Now 30 degrees is in the first quadrant, sine was positive because everything's positive. 150 is in the second quadrant, sine is the only positive, and you'll note that we got positive a half. 210 is in the third quadrant, that's where tan is positive, so sine's negative. And 330 is in the fourth quadrant, and only cos is positive there, so sine is negative. Check out the little quadrant information. So we had sine 30. So quadrant 2 is 180 minus 30, which is 150. Quadrant 3 is 180 plus 30, which is 210. And quadrant 4 is 360 minus 30, which is 330. Let's look at the cos ratios. So cos 60 is a half, 120 is minus a half, 240 is minus a half, and 300 is positive a half. Once again, 60 is in the first quadrant. All trigs are positive. 120 is in the second quadrant. Only sine is positive, so cos is negative. 240 is in the third quadrant. Only tan is negative, so tan is positive, so cos is negative. And 300 is in the fourth quadrant, and cos is positive in the fourth quadrant. Once again, confirming our quadrants, our angles, using 60, cos of 60, we have 180 minus 60 is 120, 180 plus 60 is 240, and 360 minus 60 is 300. Finally, tan 45. So tan of 45 is 1, 135 is minus 1, 225 is 1, and 315 is minus 1. 45 is in the first quadrant, all positive, so therefore tan is positive. 135 is in the second quadrant, only sine is positive, so tan is negative. 225 is in the third quadrant, tan is positive, so we get plus 1. And 315 is in the fourth quadrant, tan is negative, so only cos is positive there, so tan is negative, that's why we get negative 1. Checking our quadrants with our angles, so using the 45, quadrant 2, 180 minus 45 is 135, quadrant 3, 180 plus 45 is 225, and quadrant 4, 360 minus 45 is 315. Thank you.